Hi everyone, and thank you for joining me today on this channel called Jacob the Analyst. And so let us welcome in the new year again and again. Now I don't do these type of reports, but this one sounded really interesting. And I want to get back and cover more about the business of track and field whenever I feel something interesting is being talked about. Also, feel free to leave comments below because I also read them, and then I provide valuable videos based on those comments as well. So, as is customary for the past few years, World Athletics President Sebastian Coe recently spent a couple days during the holiday parties and meetings being engaged in video chats with the track and field media. With 7 presidential years under his belt, he offered a few observations. Before I go in depth with those observations in this video, Seg Lickstrom, Managing Director of Track and Field News, gathered a lot of the information that I found is interesting to me being a data guy. And I want to read and review what's going on here. Now, the first thing Coe noted was that 2022 was an extraordinary year for athletes. He is quoted as saying, "I can't remember a season where I have seen such unbelievable performances. And those performances were not, just limited to the championships arena. They occurred across our continental tours, our diamond leagues, and many other manifestations." And I have to agree with him on that statement, at least from the United States perspective, of pretty much the females dominating the competition on the relays and several individual events next to the Jamaicans. Social media was crazy, and even from the likes of Sha'Carri Richardson, whether you hate or like her, it's whatever at this point. But I also want to give credit to the international stage as well, as there were records broken from many angles and from their respective leagues. Now, Coe did mention that the past 2 years were rough due to what we can't talk about on social media, which is kind of a shame, or else you get your videos demonetized and the environment kind of acts funny. And Coe is quoted as saying, "Their resilience and fortitude and forbearance that is staggering, given the challenge that the athletes were facing." He continues in this chat with reporters by saying, "Credit definitely goes to athletes by looking back at your history and struggles during the past 2 years." Now, Coe says he is not done with the World Athletics Organization. He still has lots of plans. There's still a lot of work to be done. Coe told journalists on Thursday, looking ahead to 2023 with a World Championships that will take place in Budapest, along with a World Cross Country and an expanded World Road Racing Champs set for the 1 and 5K, which I might either consider joining if I was, fast enough. "We're in good shape," Coe says, laughing. "Probably better shape than I thought we'd be in a few weeks into the row. We went through the hard yards, actually the hard years, where we rewrote and redesigned the sport." And I honestly have to give Coe credit for doing different things, like the Continental Tours, which I don't really cover, but it gives fans the opportunity to keep up with their favorite players between these big competitions, and it also gives me something to talk about as a content creator as well. Now, this next step is interesting, as sometimes I am about data as well. In the post-hard years, post-coughing era, Coe aims to grow the sport with data-driven focus, which I think is a great idea. See, Lickstrom, the columnist, writes, "The next few seasons should speak to his effectiveness in doing so. The proof should be in the pudding." Coe says, "We're placing a great deal more store on being able to define the impact that our events have on your countries, your communities, your neighborhoods, and that's important because we are increasingly living in a world where people want to know, how do your events sit alongside the strategic imperatives of a region, a city, a country?" Now, that is something I have not thought about myself in terms of the strategic imperative of the hosting country. Now, to me, with these terms mean like strategic imperatives, at the bottom line is how much money does this bring? Because these events are not cheap. And sometimes they might be hosted at a local gym or a lackluster facility if it's a low rating, tour or something that doesn't gauge that much interest because your best or favorite runners aren't actually performing. And to compete in the marketplace, Coe emphasized the importance of being able to quantify, for example, the impact of your 4 combined world championships in the competition year, where you have team walks, indoor, outdoor, and the under 20 competition. In dollar terms, Coe reported the WA, which is short for World Athletics, grossed about $316 million last year, where approximately 2/3 of that revenue came from Eugene, Oregon. And he says, but this is important because of our ability to go and sell our events into agencies, countries, institutions that are going to be making judgments about what does the bottom line look like and your impact. Now, the bottom line that he is referring to here, from what I am interpreting, comes down to simply money, and the term impact goes to the velocity of growth and recognition as an organization, where it is by social media or whatever media is out there. But let us pause for a bit and go back to this $316 million that the WA World Athletics generated. I have to give credit to where credit is due if $360 million is what they actually grossed last year. That is not bad. I actually think this year the WA could gross at least 400 million. And I want to say this, and yeah, there's gonna be Abby Steiner haters, but that's honestly, if Abby Steiner, assuming she stays healthy and decides to participate in the Diamond League and also participate in maybe 1 or 2 World Athletics Gold Tour that usually take place in known parts of Europe. Now, I said it in an earlier video around the summertime of last year that Abby Steiner was the most popular kid on the block, and most of the revenue, without me diving into the WA's accounting books, came from the United States. And it's not rocket science and doesn't require a rocket science degree. Just the amount of social media buzz and attention. And you can look at views on the trending videos during the mid to early last year. And that added to the Abby Steiner hype. And I'm just telling you guys what I saw from the algorithm. Okay, so, and if you guys have guessed by now, that is pretty much why the majority of athletes talked about on this channel have been nothing but the US, or either they were raised in the US and decided to run run in Europe due to the second citizenship, because some of these athletes have 2 passports, one from the US and one from overseas. And if you see other channels like Athletic Rewind and Athletic Interest, and there's some that's popped up recently, just to name a few, we're all trying to carve out a niche in this space, because as it's projected, it's hard for me to see any slowdown. All right, overall, I'm optimistic about this coming year, but I don't know what niche to carve out myself, because the pie is really big. And I spoke to After News Delight, a YouTube channel. Make sure you check them out. There's just so much stuff you could cover in track and field that it's crazy. And even me, just having 2,000 subscribers, I'm happy with that number, because that gives me the opportunity to do more with what I have. Okay, and people are overlooking short clips, YouTube short clips. YouTube short clips should be really, really crazy and on everyone's bucket list. Anyway, Let me get back to the topic here. Regardless, the focus will be on U.S. and Western ties on this channel. And obviously, I'm from the U.S., so I'm, I'm going to talk about U.S. athletes. Anyway, Coe remarked further in the media article by saying, there is research done by Nelson, and the measurements across our signature events are in 5 key areas. That's economic, social, media, environmental, and of course, attendance. And that allows us to be very much more prescriptive about what it is that we are actually achieving in legacy value from an event. Now, at this juncture of the interview, Coe gave some numbers, and let's talk about numbers. These numbers are not financial numbers, but they are at least telling me what the supply of athletes and competitions are. So let me start with number one. They had 4 world championship events in 2022 that embraced 4,000 athletes and 180 countries competing with 261 national records set. Number two, they reached a cumulative global TV audience of over 1 billion. Not sure if that is impressions, views, or people assuming you are a social media junkie, but regardless, I cannot sleep on that number because it is a lot. Number three, the third number I have here is 13,000 athletes from 159 countries competed across Diamond League and Continental Tour events with 173 national records set. And even that is, again, another niche that no one has yet to focus on in this space, especially with your silver and bronze tours. But I think, quite honestly, the WA needs to get rid of those silver and bronze tour names because it is just, to me, it sounds like bad marketing, as it makes those locations sound a bit inferior and not worth paying any attention to. Now, these are the numbers of what I have as far as the supply of athletes. I don't know what the previous years were, but with the Olympics, that delayed so many things. And that is why we're seeing so many athletes make up from that particular coughing situation. So I think that's why we're seeing a glut of supply. But if we have a glut of supply, that means that hopefully there's an equal enough demand or more to balance out the financials. Okay. Now, describing internet engagement and more numbers, Coe stated, we had 34 million hits on your website. If you look at our reach globally across all of these platforms, we were reaching about 10 billion people over the course of the year throughout those championships, and our own social media hit 10 million followers. So they reached 10 billion people, which there's only 6 billion people in this world. So, yeah, so maybe people were rewatching these events several times to make sense of that number. And your social media from the WA perspective hit 10 million followers, which is pretty okay for an organization that size. It's okay. It's not wow, but I think by the end of this year, 2023, they can probably get to 14 million, depending on how I'm seeing the projections right now. Finishing with his rundown of the numbers, Coe concluded, if you sort of throw all that into the melting pot, what I am really trying to say, we are a global sport. We are a global sport that's performing at its best. And look, there are only 2 real global sports. That's us and soccer. Coe added, I think that we're in really good shape. Aside from the championship arena, we had a full Diamond League program, and we also had 162 Continental Tour events. And that's important because our philosophy, both mine and WA CEO John Ridgeon's philosophy, is to do everything we possibly can to really bluster the one-day opportunities. And I think the WA are really doing an excellent job with that. However, I think the marketing of the Diamond League needs to be better. So hopefully, some of the 300 million can go into making sure your website stays updated, and maybe throw more, money to the athletes, as these events are not cheap, from the finals, semifinals, and he just gives some type of bonus to the people participating. A few thousand, it doesn't hurt. Coe also goes on further to say, Continental Tour is important for us because that actually increases the competition opportunities. It will, over time, I hope, increase the financial security of athletes, but it also allows athletes to be competing closer to your own neighbors, to their own neighborhoods, to their own neighborhoods, and that's important. Additionally, Coe assessed the promise of 2023 for the sport. Now, with financial security, it's with athletes being able to afford to compete because traveling can be expensive. So you might see these WA silver and bronze tours as well for global athletes to sign up and compete if that opportunity came to your region. Now, Coe goes on further to remark that there will be another world championship. He goes on further to say, we weren't expecting two in a row, but there you go. It's a high class problem, but we do have to be cognizant of the fact that the athletes are being tested a lot of late. The postponement of the Tokyo Olympic Games, I think a lot of people didn't quite understand how complex that landscape was. And I think that's why there's like somewhat of a supply of athletes from the numbers that he mentioned. But let me read on further to what he has to say, because I like how this guy thinks. It wasn't just pulling an Olympic Games out of one year. The impact of on the let me restart that. It wasn't just pulling an Olympic Games out of one year. The impact on the compacted calendar has been quite profound. So we need to be conscious that, yeah, we have got more of the athletes and we have more opportunities. But I'm sure the athletes, the coaches, the national structures that they work within will be conscious that they are an asset that you don't want to be taken to the mill too regularly. Welfare is important, but we do have a world championships next year. It's important that that is seen as a hugely important one. You hear me use the word momentum a lot, and am unashamedly talking about it, because the athletes have created a momentum for us that it would be entirely remiss of us not to really build on. And we will be building a lot of elements in terms of that momentum. In 2023, we all have a real focus, for instance, on gathering, analyzing, and the use of data much more widely. We don't want this just to be about TV graphics. We want this technology and data to be actually used to really make our sport more understandable, more accessible, and certainly more open to interpretation amongst young people who are driven in large part by technology and development around it. Okay, so that's what he says. And I think Coe is on to something right here, because to me, as a, I guess you call me YouTube, people think I'm a content creator, but I'm actually like an engineer. I look at this data, and what this is telling me is that, obviously there's a whole bunch of money coming to track and field, and you want to catch some of that pie. And the pie is really big that you could talk about anything. So there's a niche audience that I, make videos for, but I haven't even talked about United States. Man, I have not covered probably like 5% of my videos are on U.S. male athletes, and that's it. But no one talks about the shot put. No one talks about like all these other field events or even international, athletes, and you put a U.S. spin into that. So I think track and field is a gold mine of opportunity, it's a gold mine of talent, and it's good to see that the world athletics is making money. And so what that means, if they make money, we all can get a piece of that pie, which is why I like the business of sports and why I'm making this video. No fancy graphics, just my commentary. Leave comments on what you think. Now, as a spectator, obviously, I like the sport. I think the United States women killed it last year. And yeah, it's going to be interesting 2023. So hopefully our team stays healthy and strong, and I'll try as much to capture like what I think is interesting on this Jacob the Analyst channel. Have a great day, guys. Oh, one last thing. Shout out to two people. David Kloss, he continually donates to the channel. And Afternoons Delight, make sure you check out his YouTube channel as well, because he'll be dropping some track related videos coming this season. I'll talk to you guys later. Have a great day.